We are live, it says. I'm just going to make sure it's on Facebook and real.
Not yet.
And no, it's not yet. Testing 1, 2, 3. Oh no, it shows my picture as I go. There we go. Okay, can you say something out loud?
Yes. Can you hear me? Let me go to your page so
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Good. Perfect. Okay, that's all we need. We are live. Sometimes there's technical difficulties and we didn't have any, so we're good. So, hello everyone. Welcome to my page. I'm Paul Hanrider of Awakening You, and we have the beautiful Monica Ramirez. She calls herself the Warrior of Love. You can see it there underneath her beautiful image on the screen there. And I'm going to hand it over to Monica, and she's going to tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does and what lights her up.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name is Monica Ramirez, and my spiritual name is Warrior of Love. I am an architect of inner transformation. I have many certifications about limiting beliefs from NLP, from hypnotherapy, belief specialist, and so forth. And it has been my work, my life work, in believing in myself. And now that's what I do with people, where help them to believe in themselves.
Beautiful. Okay, so and where do you live, Monica? Just so that we have that as reference.
Yes, for the moment we're living in McAllen, Texas, and soon to be moving.
Okay. Somewhere warmer, or hopefully that's good.
Well, it is
You don't
what
have
it
to
is.
share where. It is what it is. Beautiful. Okay, so Monica and I had a beautiful chat, and one of the kind of most important things that are happening for people that are awakening right now is something called shadow work. And I'm going to get Monica to describe what that is, and I'll add based on my experience.
Yes, the one that created the name shadow work, it was Carl Jung, that many of you know it as a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. And the thing is, everybody's carrying shame and blame and guilt and fears, and those are limiting beliefs. So I became precisely and very, very interested since a while back, because everything is, it is in our subconscious, let's put it like that. And that's what it dictates our lives. So we are creators, every single human being. The thing is, we're creating the life that is all around us. And if you have those limiting beliefs, I don't care how many affirmations you do a day, it is not going to change if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe that you can have everything that you want. So that's why I call myself architect of inner transformation, because inside of us we can change the reality of our lives and our life experience that we want to have.
And essentially, the root of that is we are all divine creators, and we're making everything that's happening in our life, whether we want to admit it or not. The minute we start to see our shadow and start to realize things are happening for us and not to us, we take our power back and magic starts to happen.
The thing is, everybody is afraid of just the name shadow. I did not put a name. It was Carl Jung, the one that created the name. But, and that's one of the things that we have to overcome, the fear of our own shadows. We have to actually love the shadows, because without those shadows, we would not become the person that we are now. If I wanted to change my life and erase all my past experience, I would not be the person that I am now. So it is important to actually observe it and get out of the victim mentality so we can empower ourselves. But we have to observe those shadows.
Mm-hmm. And essentially, I've been reading this beautiful book. It's called Existential Kink. It's Carolyn, I can't remember her last name, but it basically talks that we've had so many negative experiences. We've almost became what they call a sadomasochist. So we kind of get off on hurting ourselves or have negative experiences because we don't trust ourselves to be able to have the positive experiences. So when we can get out of the shadow and the belief that this is all we deserve is pain and suffering and turmoil, we can all of a sudden flip that into the non-shadow, which is in the light, which gives us our power back and allows us to have a magnificent life. Would you agree?
Yes, and I will add to that what you just said. It is we have addictions. And addictions it is not only to alcohol or drugs or things like that. Addictions to behaviors. Those are the ones that keep us stuck in there. So once that we see it and observe it like, oh my gosh, I've been hurting myself, I've been playing the victim role for pity or receiving that attention of others, that's when we can change it. I used to have lupus, RA, and fibromyalgia, and depression, suicidal depression, until I stopped actually looking for pity from other people. That's when I started coming to understand and accepting myself and loving myself. So it is important to observe those shadows that we don't want to see because it can be painful or shameful or full of guilt. So you can change your life. And people, it can be as painful as one of my teachers told me once. It is going to be as painful as you want to be.
Until you hit bottom and eventually make a choice out, is the way I'll add to that.
I am very grateful for the boredom because if we didn't have the boredom, we'll continue to be living exactly the same things that we're so tired of living.
Yes. It's like taking a break or a vacation for a little bit.
Yes. Like, oh my God, I'm suffering so much. Oh my God. And you get bored of doing the same thing. And it's up to us because everything is a matter of choice, everything that we live.
Mhm.
I've been married several times. And in one of my marriages, in my third marriage, I was getting beat up. And it would kind of lasted until I died, or it lasted until I say, no more. I'm tired of this. So I choose to get married. So I'm not a victim because it was my choice, but it was my choice also to get out of that relationship too.
Well, you chose to have that experience. You chose to invite that kind of man into your life, which are all active choices. It was done from an unconscious state because you needed to learn this lesson. So, guess what? You had the hard work of standing in your power and saying no more and don't do that and whatever, which created you into something stronger. Did it not?
And the thing is, sometimes we choose that kind of experience because we didn't felt our value, that we are worthy. And that comes a lot of from our childhood. It depends on how we were raised. And we accept those kind of situations in our lives, the job, the relationship, the situations that we are friends, etc. Because we're looking, every single human being is looking for being loved and accepted. And we're looking from outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for the trauma that we went. Everybody has trauma. I don't care which human says, oh, I don't have trauma. Just the birth is traumatic. So in the moment we start observing our trauma, that's how we can say, okay, we can change it and stop doing what we are, how we're treating ourselves.
Absolutely. And often it's injected before we're consciously able to make a choice as a human being. So, up until the age of 7, everything your parents do, everything they say, everything your grandparents, everything church and state and everything all comes and tells you, oh, you must be a good little boy and get a job and get an education and have kids, and which is not even our plan, but it's told to us that it's important.
That's true. And men actually have it harder in that way. And the man is like, you should not cry. Men don't cry. You should not have feelings. You should not have emotions. And you should be in war with the women. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the programming.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where it comes a lot of more suffering because you're just holding it in and holding it in. And that's where it creates more problems. And with the women, we have our set of things, also our limiting beliefs that the roles of a woman or a roles of a man, that also is part of the limiting beliefs that we are all experiencing.
And I would agree. I would say it's just as hard for the women because the roles have been inverted. The men have been over feminized and can't be emotional and all these other things, but women are being over masculinized and take the role of the masculine, and they're hating it, and they're not being able to be emotional. They're not being able to be in their surrendered feminine. And when I say surrender, it's not like give up and let everybody do whatever they want, but surrendered feminine is a soft woman that's not racing to get a job done and fix everything that a lot of single mothers have. It's something that's been put in their ear and told that it's important, and it's not.
Or one of the roles that they gave it to every single female is like you are born, you grow, have to get married, and you have to have kids, and then grandmother, and that's it for
Yeah.
you. But right now, something that I'm observing in a lot of my clients, it is they don't want to get married, they don't want to have kids, and they're carrying the guilt and the shame for not wanting those things that the society is wanting from them. So they
As
feel
well as their
robbed.
parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles. Yep, society. Yep.
So, and it is okay if you don't want to be mom, or you don't want to get married. It is okay, but we're carrying all that guilt.
Absolutely.
And that's what it creates actually physical problems and mental problems, of course.
Hmm. I agree. And you talked about physical problems and mental problems. I just wanted to go back. You said you healed lupus. So how would you say you did that? Because that's something important for people to know.
Yes, I healed lupus, RA, and fibromyalgia and depression that I was suicidal. It was, well, it started when my childhood, I was raised by a narcissist family, a mother precisely, and it was not believing in myself. So I got different. In one of my marriage that I just talked, it was I was getting beat up, and I don't thought I accept the situation because I didn't thought that I was worth it more. I was not worth for my family. Of course, I was not going to worth for the world. So that's why I accept a situation in like that. That's when I started with the lupus, and of course, I did not. He threatened me that if I divorced him, he was going to kill me. So I started holding it everything in, and what happened? I got lupus, RA, and of course I thought in suicidal because that was an easy way out. Until I got pregnant on my daughter, and I was needing to show her that there was a different way, that or else she was gonna think that that was normal. And she was gonna look for a man that treat her like I was getting treated.
Hmm.
So the love of my daughter is the one actually got me out and I start loving myself and start fighting for me and start saying no more or this kind of treatment. I deserve better. I don't know what it was in that moment, but I knew I deserve better. And I went to the transition of working with myself and observing all my limiting beliefs and all the programs that I have accepted. Because everybody can throw you programs. How they go into your being, into your subconscious, is you have to accept them. And the moment I move from accepting or observing my programs that I had and rejecting each one of them or debunking each one of them, that's how I overcome the that pain, and I started learning that I worth it, and I start falling in love with life again, and that's how I start getting healed. And I have about 10 years without having a flare up, and now I teach how to become the observer. So like that, when the thoughts come to your head or the emotions come to your head, that is the ones that create the reality, you can transform them. So that's what I teach and to all my students, and of course, and I continue working in progress. I'm a human being like everybody else. I'm not gonna say I never go sad because that will be unrealistic. But I can control my emotions and my thoughts.
So I'm going to summarize what I heard. So you went from disease to ease. So a sickness, which is disease, and to ease, which is self love, through simply self loving yourself and moving through all the stuff that was your husband, your past, your self belief, to the point that disease was no longer in your body.
Yes,
Beautiful.
basically, and also falling in love with you. How many times we reject ourselves? I mean, one of the things that when I talk with people is how do you talk to yourself when you see yourself in the mirror? Oh, I'm too fat, too thin, too short, too this or too that, or you're ugly, or you're worthless, and so forth. And you're putting the makeup and calling yourself names, and that is one of the vices that we have, and very negative vices. Instead of hey, you can do it, you're worthy, you're beautiful, whatever it is, that you can overcome that. But we have to put attention, we have to observe, how do we talk to ourselves? How do
Yeah.
we behave ourselves? Do we do everything to please others without pleasing ourselves because we want to be accepted? How many things we do for others that we could not be able to do ourselves? Why we talk to ourselves in that way, but we will not talk that to our neighbor or to our friends? So those things are the ones that we have to put attention. So like that we can transform our life experience that we want.
Beautiful. So I agree with that completely. Now let's reframe that a little bit. So why do we say all these negative stories about ourselves? We basically create a story, a self-belief that I'm not good enough, or I can't be dating, or whatever. And eventually we get to the point where we create armor in our body, in our beliefs, in our protection, and it keeps us safe to be in a negative state. So we end up keep saying these stories so that we'll be small and we won't stick our head up and get loved and get a truck hit us on our forehead again. So we
Yes.
basically, that's where I talked about the sadomasochist thing, and I'm seeing this more and more in my life. We basically keep ourselves small and say all these negative things about ourselves just in case the story that we said is right, and we're not worthy of love and we can't be loved and we're ugly or something, and then our body becomes ugly. I become fat. I was at the biggest I was 285 pounds when I went to university, and I'm now 100 pounds lighter. But it all came from self-love. It was me wanting to be ugly to women and too fat and all these kind of things, which my ex-wife told me all the time, which was her trying to avoid having sexuality with me because she had a sexual trauma, but I didn't know this at the time. You're too fat and you're too ugly and all this kind of stuff, which goes into my self-worth. But it wasn't true. As I left the marriage and I found self-love for myself, divorce and other things, I started to say, I am pretty sexy. I am pretty good. And I've lost over 100 pounds in that period. Exactly what you're saying, because I was self-love. Uh, Choices like going on a carnivore diet and other things that is what my body requires. Everybody's body's different. Made me lose weight as well, and healed diabetes and cured all these things that were going on. So the same things that you're talking about, I have had a mirror image of in different ways because I was getting older. And when you get older, you get diabetes and you get a stroke and all this kind of stuff. Well, no, as soon as I started to eat better and stop putting all the poisons in my body, everything changed. Does
That's
that
good.
align with your belief?
Yes, it is because yes, we tend to have many stories in our head, and those are playing constantly. And because we're not used to be aware of our thoughts, that story is going to be playing not only for one day; it's going to be playing for weeks, for months, for years, etc. And that's the story we're telling ourselves because that's what we're listening. It is
Yeah.
important to understand our ego. When we understand our ego, it can be our best ally and the best tool that we can have for our growth. The thing is, we feel it like, oh, we should not believe in ourselves because that's the custom that they put us on us. That you believe in yourself, that's very egoistic, thinking
Mhm.
that you are gonna love yourself. And that's what it keeps us stuck. Instead of using the ego as a tool to grow, that's when you can say, okay, if someone is making you react, it's like it is a mirror image of ourselves what is making us react. That's why we can see it.
Mhm.
So if your ego is telling you, oh, you should be mad at that person because it's making you react, no, apply it to yourself.
Mhm.
Understand where it's coming from. Understand that there's something on me that I have to change, or maybe I come from a trauma when I was 4 years old or 7 years old, or certain situation or a past marriage or whatever it is. So in that moment, you can change it. It doesn't have to do anything with the person that you're criticizing or making you feel lesser. It has to do with your own personal trauma.
And it's simple as a choice.
Yes.
Change scares the hell out of people, but it's simple. I love myself. Do you believe it? I believe it now, but for the longest time I keep saying it over and over and over, but I didn't really feel it in my body. The minute you've truly chosen it is the change.
And accept yourself, who you are. Don't try to, and because we have as human beings, we have the tendency to compare ourselves to everybody
Yeah,
and envy of everybody. That means that we are lesser than someone else, and
yeah,
that's the lack of love to self. So
absolutely.
in the moment we stop comparing to anyone or start envying what other people have, we start accepting who we are. We can start doing the changes. Because if you compare or you envy, it's because you feel lesser. So your ego is telling you that. And that's why we can use the ego as a tool to grow. Because it's like, why I'm going to compare to someone else? Because they have more years in this path than me. They've been working with themselves for more years. Well, I will get there when I get there. So right now, I have to focus on me and what things make me react in this moment or make me feel uncomfortable in this moment so I can bring the change in my life. I cannot
And it
change
starts with
anyone
you every
except me.
time. Because
Exactly.
you're okay. So let's go back because I love ego is a beautiful word. I consider it an acronym, and it's edge God out. It means deprecate yourself so you're not connected to God and you're not with all the God source capabilities that we all have as human beings, but we don't accept. And there's a beautiful book called The Course in Miracles. And at the first chapter, it says there was the mad thought. And it was like, we are all part of God. And somebody said, what if I wasn't part of God? Guess what? And we instantly manifested, and it created the human condition, the human experience. So we said, okay, I'm going to let my brain run the show, which is my ego. And it's basically going to keep telling me I'm not good enough to have all the things that I want. So now you're separated from God and you're living a really nasty, uncomfortable experience that's really not what you're worthy of as part of God. Now, if you think if God doesn't really interact or feel comfortable for people, God is our highest version of ourselves, if you can think of it that way. That's me being shining light and happy and positive and everything working out for me all the time as a human. We're all fractals of God. So you don't have to say, oh, I'm part of this higher power that doesn't make me, I couldn't be possibly worthy of being God. Well, I living my best possible life is my God source, or we all have a God self, whether or not we want to admit it or not. But we're on a journey back to that. That's why the whole idea of awakening, shadow work, etc., is all about waking up to what we're doing to ourselves. What's hiding in our shadow telling us we're not worthy, we're not good enough, you can't do that, this is not going to happen, women don't like you, blah, blah. The stories are a million in our heads. Does that align with you?
Yes, and we have to understand that what is running the show is our subconscious. And we are carrying fears and shames and blames and everything from our ancestors, not only from our parents.
Past life, yeah.
We have to understand that our parents also were programmed by their parents and so on. So we have to understand that it is not about guilting them, it is about understanding who they were in reality. I have heard people like, oh, my parents were a saint. They didn't do any mistakes. They were humans.
They
They
were
had to do mistakes, as we do. You
and we
know,
always put our parents on a pedestal, right? So yeah, I hear you.
yeah. They were humans. As your grandparents, they were humans. Everybody were humans. So they did mistakes. And you observe them as they were, with the mistakes or the limitations they had or the fears that they had. And that's how you can start changing yourself because you're going to understand that the same fears, the same blames and shames, wherever they were having, you have it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like any sickness, they had diabetes. Oh, probably I'm going to have it. Yes or no. It depends in how you're going to treat yourself, how you're going to feed yourself, how you're gonna observe yourself. Diabetes is, I believe that all the sickness are psychosomatic. Diabetes, it is a lack of love.
Mm-hmm.
So in the moment you start loving more yourself and accepting more who you are, just as you are, like, yes, of course, you're gonna have things that you have to change in you. You cannot change anyone except yourself. That's how you start healing yourself, and that's how I heal myself. If
Mm-hmm.
we go with lupus, lupus is a sickness of the immune system. That what it says the loop basically is attacks different organs thinking that they don't belong to you, like your heart, your liver, your kidneys, whatever it is. Defending you is attacking you and killing you.
Mm-hmm.
So in the moment you stop attacking yourself, because that's what I came to understand, that I was attacking, I self-defending me, I was attacking me.
Mm-hmm.
So in the moment I start observing that, and I start loving myself and accepting who I was, I stopped having flare-ups. I stopped
Mm-hmm.
being in pain. I stopped being swollen. Why? Because I was starting to accept myself. And
Mm-hmm.
like that goes to everything that we do. Lupus is just an example because I live that. Depression, we have the two voices. Every single human being, I don't care who it is, we have the two voices, one that is going to push you down and one that is going to push you up. And it's
Mm-hmm.
up to us by our choice to which voices we are going to hear.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to put attention to the voice that's going to push you down, it can take you really, really down to the
Mm-hmm.
point that you might commit suicide.
Yeah.
And if you put attention to the other voice that is softer, that is not as loud as the negative, you put attention to their voice like, hey, you can pass this. This is just passenger. You're more than this. And it's always pushing you up. Then that's how you can control if you want to be, how long you're going to be sad, how long you're going to be depressed, how long, how far you want to take it. I'm not going to say that being sad is not normal. It is completely normal. It's part of being human, as being mad and so forth. It is a myth saying that any of the coaches or healers or anyone, it is perfect, never going to get sad or never going to get mad. Everybody's having a life experience as human. So that's part of it. That's what it makes us grow when we get out of that. But if we observe it in a different way, if we actually put attention to those thoughts and emotions in the
And
heart.
there's no good or bad in any of that because it just is, right? It's we ourselves that judges ourselves and says, I got to lock that away. That's my dark side and that's my light side. No, it's all part of God. It's all part of possibility. So I agree.
Well, if we're talking about God, He gives us the free will to choose what experience we want to have, what we decide to, how we want to see ourselves as our worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have programs that they're in our subconscious rolling actually our life. But it's up to us, not because someone tell you you were worthless. It doesn't matter what's your parent or your ex-wife or your ex-husband or whatever it is you're making the choice to accept that, to change that. If it doesn't matter if you did it the week before, today you can change. Every day you have the opportunity to react different, to feel different. It
Mm-hmm.
is no, you're not marked for whatever things that you did in your past. You're marked forever.
Mm-hmm.
We acted with information that we had in our past. That doesn't mean that that's gonna be the rest of our life, because you can make a different choice today to be
Right.
different.
So can I ask you a question based on that?
Yes.
So when you said you've been three different marriages. So when you made choices in those marriages, how did it feel before you made the choice? Maybe scary or whatever. How did it feel after you made the choice? And then how did things change after that?
I can tell you that I don't feel that any human being, well, the majority of the human beings, don't go into a marriage thinking that they're gonna get divorced. Every time that they got married, they think that they're, oh, I'm gonna grow old with this person.
Right.
So in that moment, obviously, you're not thinking, you don't wake up and say, oh, I'm going to get a divorce tomorrow. That doesn't work like that. Usually, it might be some people, I'm not going to deny that, but usually it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So it's, it is scary. Anything that is going to bring you a change in your life, it feels scary. I'm moving and I'm scared that I'm moving.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I've been here for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left Mexico, I was scared. I moved into another country. So of
Mm-hmm.
course I was scared. Every time that you do a change in your life or something different that you don't know how it's gonna go, it gets scary and your ego is gonna jump in.
Mm-hmm.
But once that you jump in, you can start seeing the adventure in life. Oh, this is gonna be new. This is going to be
Is it
different. I
is
don't
it
know how it's going to
possible
react.
that wasn't fear and it was exhilaration, like going over the top of the roller coaster? You're at the top and you think it's fear, but it's like, holy shit, this is gonna feel great, and this is great when you're at the bottom. Is that possible?
Many There's many sayings about when we live as a kid. The kids live with that emotion and that excitement of they don't know what is gonna go. They're gonna
Yeah,
go with their parents and they're gonna see something new, maybe toys, maybe candies, maybe whatever. But they're living with that adventure.
presence. Yep.
And and that's what we need to go back to, that adventure in life. Yes, your ego has many layers. One of the layers is gonna the ego doesn't like changes. In the moment you understand that the one that is instigating the fear, it is your ego. Like, oh, okay, it is my ego because it don't like changes. So
Right.
in the moment you accept that, it's like, okay, this is not mine. This is like a another side of me that I just have to send it to take a walk. I'm gonna
Mhm.
be doing this. Why? Because it is the best that I wanna do for me in this moment. And believe me, your ego is very obedient. When you send it to take a walk or hike or whatever, or sit in the back seat in my car, that's when you are in control, or else your ego is the one that driving your car, driving your life.
Right. But are you even in control at that point? You're surrendering to what's going to show up in life where the ego controlled a lot of times. It's like, I have to have this relationship. I have to have the money. I have to, where I'm finding much more when we're in presence, it's less control. You're just living your life and experiencing as it shows up. And then there's no expectations.
Sometimes making no expectations is the best way. You don't know, that's part of the adventure when you're not making expectations, because that's what how we get hurt at the same time when we do expectations. It
Absolutely.
doesn't come out exactly how you the story that you were playing in your head. You're gonna feel hurt. But if you bring down that story that you have it in your head and you put it in the side and you just go because this is something is calling you there. In a way, you're being guided.
Hmm.
You're following your intuition and you're following your heart, not your ego. Your ego is the one that is instigating you the fears, the one trying to control you. So it's your choice which one you want to follow.
Absolutely. And it's an actual process to recognize, usually when you're triggered, like, oh, I want to hit you, or I want to swear at you, or whatever. Usually that's something going on with your ego, and to take a breath and to step back and to witness what story's going on. Oh, that's my dad, and you're the symbol of my dad right now because he talked to me like that, or whatever. You will gain so much in that moment of clarity, of just sitting, breathing instead of reacting. And that's also that exhilaration, that fear at the same time. It's like, what's going to happen if I do different this time? Instead of getting angry, I just breathe and let it go. And it's like, okay, that was my dad. It doesn't exist anymore. I choose better. Can be magic.
Yes. I tell many of my clients sometimes before we take a choice or a decision, just breathe, center yourself. When you center yourself and breathe from there, from the calmness, make the choice. Because if we make the choice, instigated by the ego, instigated by our, of course, we have the fears and of the unknown are making stories in our head. If we make the choice from there, it's not going to be ever the right one. But when we breathe and we center ourselves and we calm down, we can see the whole perspective, what is the best for us. And that's the best way to make a choice.
And more than likely, once you've learned that and you've got into comfort with that, you will no longer react. You will not fly off the handle, which is some trigger of the past energies or whatever. You're going to breathe into it. I may not deal with it right in that moment. I got this knot in my heart and it's like, okay, this isn't the right time for this to come out. And then I'll go back into my bedroom 2 hours later and say, holy frick, what was that? That was awful. But it did not need to come out on that person if they've done nothing to cause that or instigate that. So it's consciousness at that point. You talked about unconscious. Now we're to being conscious of our reactions.
And the worst part is when we feel like that, that's when you start carrying the shame and the blame. So that's when you're more easy to manipulated by your own ego or anyone
Absolutely.
because you're carrying the guilt and the shame. So Yes.
Shame on you. You did that. Well, no, I feel that emotion. I got to feel that emotion. Go home in your bed and feel that emotion so you never have to feel it again. And then you don't have to punish yourself. You will not react anymore. That's the change. That's awakening. You talked about subconscious, which is unconscious. Basically, it's below consciousness, sub below. So we have all these stories that are constantly playing to protect us. It's like, hey, I'm not interested. I'm going to dress ugly today, but I want a date and I want relationship, but I now feel rejected and I'm always rejected and I'm small and because I'm doing these things to stay safe.
Yes. I mean, when we generalize it, like this is going to be always my life, you're not generalizing in that moment. That's what we're going to attract, what we're generalizing. And if someone treat us good, and like we're like, no, you're supposed to treat me wrong. Why? Because
That's
that's the
all we
story
spend.
again that you're playing in your head.
Yep.
And that
And
comes
so
from fears from your past that you continue playing again.
absolutely. And to be really conscious when you're having an experience of that showing up in your life, ask yourself, where's this coming from? Where did this start? Where's the root? And it may not happen in that exact moment, but by just asking that question, it will show up later on. Like I'll find it a day later or whatever. It's like, oh, dad used to do that to me, or mom did that. And my mom was a narcissist and I could never feel emotion. And now I have all this emotion that I've trapped inside my body and it's hurting me and making me sick. And I don't even know why, because
Yes.
I've suppressed it. I was told to suppress it. Shut up. Don't talk. That's what parents say sometimes, or spank you on the bum for acting up. Um, I wanted to bring up, you mentioned that we're born from our mom and dad. So something I've learned and now channeled is we're the genetic half of each of our parents and it's joined together. And we're literally carrying, think of genetics as the software that came from your parents that defines who you are and what you think and what you believe. What you get in your genetics is partly there. It's like, okay, I have a lineage trauma and I'm feeling this rape from my great grandmother that she never dealt with way back then. I'm now having to clean up, but my mother had it too, and she had that wounding and other things. So in shamanism, it teaches that we're here to heal all that for our whole lineage. So it might be tens of thousands of people up that we're now feeling. So when we talk about past lives and all this kind of stuff, it could be a great grandmother's experience or a grandfather's experience, or you'll find out that because great grandpa spanked great or grandpa was more likely to spank my dad, and I'm more likely to spank or get spanked by my dad, and then I'm more likely to spank my kids, which is ultimately the choice that we're making in this human genetic lineage experience to finally end the cycle and say, no more, I'm the medicine, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yes, we continue repeating the stories of our parents or grandparents, all of our family lineage. Epigenetics talks about that.
Yep.
So there are many fears, like or fears of men, or fears of women, or fears of this for the past experience of our ancestors. Not necessarily is our life, not necessarily is our life experience, but that life experience we adopted from them. So onto
Yeah.
one of the members is decided to, okay, I need to do this work. So you don't pass it on to future generations. Like I was mentioning, I did not want it to continue in that relationship where I was getting beat up because I did not want it, my daughter to see that was normal. Or else, if I stay in that relationship, when she grew older, she would look for a man that exactly to beat her, to get beat up like her mother did, and so on, and future generations.
Right.
So it was, I had to be the strong one and to
You
say,
were.
with all the fear in the world, I need to get out of this relationship before my daughter see this is normal, because it wasn't.
So is that something that happened over all three of your marriages that you slowly refined and improved, or can you explain the
No,
progression?
there were different
They were different.
situations why I divorced from my other marriages.
Okay.
It was infidelity from two of them, and then they beat up, and now I'm happy married with my
Right. And
husband.
that infidelity was probably a past life or epigenetic back to some great grandmother or something which you healed and eventually made a choice, right?
Well, the thing is, part of the customs, I was raised by the Catholic Church, so I studied even with nuns. So one of the things is, you get married, you stay in that marriage. It doesn't matter how bad it is, on to the last days of your
Yeah.
life. And that's how our grandmothers and great grandmothers, etc., they
Live.
live their lives. And it doesn't matter what the husband did, they stay there.
Mhm.
And until I believe I was one of the first ones in my family that got divorced. And it was like shocking, like how? Not the first one, but one of the first ones. So it was shocking. Like, how dare you do that? And if I went with the fear like my family is going to reject me because I am a divorced woman, because I did not follow the tradition, probably at this moment I will be already dead. But I have to demonstrate something to my daughter that you don't have to stay in a relationship where you're not being appreciated or loved or protected, whatever you want from a relationship. So, and they can choose better. So that's where the world is changing now. That's why there are many more divorces because people do not have to stay where they are not living the life that they want to live. And
Because
that's why it's important.
ultimately you're cleaning up the whole family lineage, the whole code, the source code of your family lineage. You have had to do the work. So you made changes in you so that those programs or repeating parameters are ended so you can have your best possible life. Would you agree? Or better possible
Yes.
life?
Because you change your standards. You're
Mhm.
not going with the standards of your grandparents. I remember growing up in Mexico, they have this saying that is like, you got good married. That's if you marry a person that comes from a family, known family, and rich family. That's how you get good married. But it is even funny just to think about that. It's like good marry or bad marry. You marry a bad person that he was poor, a good person but poor, and that is part of a tradition.
Mhm.
And but where is the value of the human being? You know
Mhm.
what it means? Because they stay in relationships they shouldn't get stay, but because they were good married. And that went into generations and generations and generations until one of us decided to change it and observe
Right.
things not for the monetary world, actually for my life experience world.
Absolutely. And and that's beautiful because at least with my marriage, you get into marriage because you're partnering with a person that's going to teach you something. And if you use it for teaching and to reshape you and all this kind of stuff versus good marriage, bad marriage, because a lot of people are having divorces or people aren't doing their work or whatever, and you can't suffer and hope your husband is going to do something. It was same with me. I was hoping my wife would outgrow her trauma or talk about it or whatever. When eventually I understood that it was hurting me and not I was loving her, but she wasn't loving me back in the same way. I had to make a choice for me, which had nothing to do with whether she was bad or good or whatever. It was ultimately I learned the lesson, and that's a soul contract that we make with a person sometimes to have a divorce and them to learn from. And she learned so much from the divorce, and I learned so much. I crashed and burned and stuff after a divorce, but it taught me so much. I don't think I could have learned that any other way. So,
Yes, and sometimes when we don't learn the lesson, we're gonna tend to repeat the same lesson until we learn it.
absolutely. Same
So
people. Yep.
that's what I told my many of my students is, okay, how many times you think you've been repeating the same lesson?
Yep.
And that's without talking about past lives.
Absolutely. And they're like, I'm gonna vomit now because I've done this 10 times to myself. But they haven't acknowledged that, and they just think that's all they're worthy of. And then they're pointing the finger at them when really they're pointing at the wrong place. They need to clean up the shit that's in their head and then start to set boundaries, start to choose themselves, and magic starts to happen.
Yes. And understand that we have to forgive ourselves for the past mistakes that we all have done. We all
Mhm,
have done past wrong choices.
mhm,
We acted with information that we had in that moment. The choices that I did when I was 15 are very different from the choices that I did at my 55.
mhm,
So I'm not the same person. And yes, I'm not going to deny that people get stuck in the old me, probably family of me that still see me as when I was 15, not the woman that I'm now at 55.
mhm.
And that's a choice. that I can change it or not. I cannot change anyone. Only the person I can change it is myself. So we cannot stop ourselves because what are the other people gonna think? They still see me as when I was 15 years old, and that's the stories that we're playing in our head.
Mhm.
But that is not gonna make me small or stop doing what I wanna do because of what other people are gonna think. So that's something that we have to overcome. That whatever judgment other people are doing to you, it is about they're talking more about themselves more than about you. They're
Mhm.
talking about their own fears, their own limitations, or whatever ideas or stories they're playing in their head. So that's where many people get stuck because what are the other people are gonna think about you?
And that's, we got to reiterate that again, because that's the most powerful element that we're all suffering under, right? We're trying to please our mom and dads, we're trying to be a good little boy and a good little girl and please our boss, and finally rise up so we have enough money so we can finally tell them to fuck off, or excuse the French. But a lot of times that's what's happening, is a boss is like a parent and that's kind of making you suffer, when really it was a story about us and us choosing ourselves and finally saying, no, you're not going to talk to me like that. And that boss might go like, oh, what are you saying to me? And it's like, no, you're not going to talk to me. I'm a human being and you don't get to talk to me like that. Yeah, maybe you might lose your job if he flies off the handle, but maybe that inner child that was in that boss needed somebody to stand up to them finally, so they saw themselves, so they finally had a choice. So it comes outside of ourselves after a while. We start to have these contracts with other people, and setting up our boundaries and doing all this kind of stuff. It's like a wave that kind of goes out by us choosing ourselves. And I'm happy, I love myself. Well, I'm teaching other people to love myself themselves by saying these things, and you talking about a divorce and healing yourself with lupus. That's the whole element of why we're having these discussions, is to talk about what we found to be truth, and then people will listen to it and they'll say, I've been doing that to myself all the time and I'm still a victim and I keep doing this. I can't just say stop being a victim, because they won't know. But the minute they hear you reflect and say, I got really sick from being a victim all the time, and eventually you had to make the conscious choice. There was no pills, there was no drugs, there was no medicine that was going to fix you, because the medicine is always within you.
Yes, that is true. Another of the aspects of the shadow work that I would like to do is the people pleaser,
Hmm.
because that goes in overboard. Everybody do it, and everybody do not even catch themselves when they're doing it. First
Absolutely.
of all, we do it because we want to be accepted, we want to be loved, and that's when we get abused from friends, from relationships, with any kind of relationship you can have, and you're always giving more than you have even for yourself or your own family. Why? Because you want to be accepted, you want to be part of the same club, or you
You
want to
want
be
to fit
loved
in.
or cared or whatever. But then you're not respecting and honoring yourself, so you're not being congruent. So in the moment that you understand and respect and honor your own self, that's when you stop being people pleaser. That doesn't mean that if I'm going to bake a cake to someone, it's like I want to be accepted or loved. I'm doing it consciously now because I want to. If I don't want to, I'm not going to give you nothing. I don't have to bake a cake. I don't have to cook. I don't have to do anything for anyone unless I want to do it.
Right.
So
So
I
keep going.
invite everybody to ask themselves how many things you do for others when you don't want to do it, because
and
that is
and
people pleasing.
extend that to, are you loving yourself by doing that? Which is, are you loving yourself by people pleasing? No, you're loving outside yourself, loving someone else more than yourself. And then you're complaining that you have no love left because you gave it to everybody else and nobody gave it back to you. It was never meant to be that way. It was always about you giving from your cup running over than giving from your love. That's why I had my divorce. My angels told me, if I don't have a divorce within 5 years, I'll die of a heart attack, because I gave all my love to my wife and I didn't get it back. And she didn't know any better, because her family was Japanese, and you didn't love outside yourself. It was all stoic and respect and other things. So not her fault, my fault for giving, because I was giving too much.
Yes.
And that choice will be the hardest choice you'll ever make. But that people pleaser, I hate to say has to die, but it is not serving you. It's a story and a program that's not helping you. Go ahead.
We just have to be conscious when we're doing things for others, why we're doing it. Like the same example with the cake. If I'm doing a cake for someone, am I doing this cake because I want to do it? Because I feel good? It is basically it's for me. It's a very selfish way to see it, but it is because I feel good making this cake for someone that I love, and it's because of me, not because of the other person. They may not even like the chocolate, but anyway, I'm gonna do it because I like the chocolate cake. You know, and just be very, very conscious
Absolutely.
why you do things for others, because it is not about I'm not gonna give anything to anyone else, because you might not be happy with that, or you might.
Hmm.
Just you have to be aware
Hmm.
what is your emotions behind everything with your thoughts,
Hmm.
and you observe every single action that you do, every single or emotion or thought that you have. That's when you're in control, not your ego, not your lacks. It is your being that is conscious why you do and why you react or defend yourself from others too.
Hmm.
At the same time, you will be in control of your life.
And you'll never resent if you gave it from love and didn't expect anything back. But the key, you mentioned a word that's really important because this word has been really shamed, the word selfish, but it is literally the choice to self love has been shamed. And that's what the word selfish. It's like if I point my finger at you or point at me and say, I'm selfish, that's awful. You're disgusting. Why are you doing that or whatever? Bullshit. I'm finally choosing me first. And other people hate it because they're feeding off of everybody else's love because they have none for themselves. So they'll call you selfish because they can't self love themselves. And it twists the whole thing. Selfish, if you can do a test on something and say, is there some element of being selfish in this, like making a cake? And I love it because I get a nice big glowing heart and I love chocolate cake and I get a bite of it and I watch them smile. That's you loving yourself. But if it's like, I have to do a chocolate cake because every birthday, everybody deserves a chocolate cake and nobody loves him and I got to help him. That's for the wrong reason.
Or maybe you're thinking in that moment, like that, I will be accepted, and like
True.
that, I'm gonna be loved if I give me the chocolate cake. And
Yep.
later on, you probably or you did not have the money to buy the materials for the cake, or you're gonna be suffering the next day, or you have diabetes and you should not be eating chocolate cake, whatever situation it is. But in the moment you're aware why you're doing it,
Absolutely.
that's when it goes with the heart and not with something, an agenda, private agenda behind, because
And
everything is in the open.
you're conscious of your reasons. Most of not being awake or unconscious or the whole ascension or awakening process is awakening to your whys. Why am I doing this? Why do I hurt? Why is my body painful? Why do I always make cakes? Why do I have no money left or whatever? Well, you made cakes for everybody and people you hardly even knew, and you made cakes, and each one cost $20 or $30 worth of materials. Well, who's to blame?
I agree. And I believe everybody has done things for people please. I
Yeah,
have done birthday parties in my house for people that they don't care about me, but I wanted to be accepted.
yeah.
People do weird things like making a birthday party for someone that they don't care for you, and do everything. And that's when we realized later on, it's like, well, they don't even care for me. And I was doing all these cooking cakes and everything for someone that don't care for
Yeah.
me. So what I was trying to do to make someone feel good, or I was just being wanted to be accepted. And everybody has done these things in different levels, for the
Yeah.
boss, for friends, for relationships, for whoever,
Hmm.
because we wanted to be accepted. So
Hmm.
that's why we have to ask ourselves those questions. When we start questioning ourselves, That's how we realize who we are. The majority of the human beings do not know themselves, do not know why they do what they do. And that's why these questions are important.
Absolutely. So let's take this to conditional versus unconditional love, because I think a person that gives lovingly without any expectation is unconditionally loving. But we're in a world where people will milk up people unconditionally loving, and they'll be conditionally loving back. So there becomes a disparity. And I think our true state is to be loving with gentle boundaries, but giving on a regular basis, because our cup is filled, we have some to overflow. But unfortunately, we learned, because of our parents didn't have the love that we needed or whatever, we had to give from part of ourselves, which hurt our health, hurt our energy. And that unconditional love feeling got broken, because if the other people don't have the self responsibility, is what I'll call it, to be able to love with balance, then it'll get way out of balance and somebody will be harmed, energetically, etc. And that's our
Yes.
wounded nature.
Yes, we just need to make it aware. So like that we are not get stuck. And so many times we feel stuck because we are so afraid to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So in the moment we observe why we are so afraid to move forward, that's how we can change the situation. And it's a matter of choice, because at the end, all this gets resumed of a matter of choice.
Absolutely. And exploring ourselves and understanding what we do in certain situations, and going up to the edge of fear and realizing it's not fear, it's a choice. And some old story that we can now unwind is creating that fear. And the more we can lean into that, the more we can pass through it and realize it's not a wall, it's just an experience that now we're changing. And that's
Yes,
how our whole life changes.
yes, that's true.
So we're coming up on the hour here. I try and keep these to an hour or whatever. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing, or is there anything burning that we need to cover?
I'm going to be teaching a class from my first book, Transformation in Metamorphosis,
Yes, please
in
show us.
the one in English from my book.
Okay, just hold up a little longer because it gets a little blurry. Transformation and Metamorphosis, that's your level 1.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is going to be on March 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be that one in English. The one in Spanish, it starts today.
Beautiful.
Yes. And if anybody wants more information, just to contact me. You
Okay.
can find my website in yourwarrioroflove.com.
Warrioroflove.com. Okay.
Yes.
I'll ask you to put it in the comments afterwards on the post, and people will have that.
Perfect.
Um, and you're on Facebook, obviously. That's how we met.
Yes.
Any other places we can look for you
Well, you can find me in Instagram as Warrior of Love too.
as well?
And LinkedIn also, Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. In
Okay.
YouTube, you can find me in my podcast and Soul Talk
Cool.
podcast.
Beautiful.
You can find me too. And of course, my website is yourwarrioroflove.com.
Beautiful. Thank you. So this is completely in the line of my Awakening You concept, is to sit with people that have awareness and give little pebbles of information from other people's experience, because the multiple facets, your experience, my experience, all come at it in different ways. And especially when it's feminine and masculine and stuff, I may only see it in the masculine way. You may see it in the feminine way, or vice versa. That's the whole intention of this. So I really enjoyed it, and I think we covered some beautiful ground. Shadow work isn't something to be scary about. It's a choice. Lean up against something that scares you and feels uncomfortable and is hiding in a cage inside yourself, and let it free by giving it back its choice, is really simply what shadow work is. You can look at it as painful or a whole bunch of emotion and scary and all this kind of stuff. But your beliefs that have been programmed into you that you're not even aware of can be in your shadow. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just is causing you to have choices or limiting your choices, so you don't even have all the choices you have.
That is true. That is so
So
true.
beautiful. Well,
Thank, thank you, Paul, for the invitation.
absolutely. And we will talk offline here in a moment. But as always, awakeningyou.net is my side. And I'm committed. I've got at least 2 or 3 more planned and a bunch more conversations coming. So, and maybe I'll even have Monica back again because we didn't even go down half the rat holes that we could have discussed. So that's beautiful. So thank you all. And thank you, Monica. Have a good day. I'm going to end the stream. Have a good one, everyone.